Good morning from Hamburg, Germany, and welcome back to the daily photography vlogs. Today is a bit overcast, so I've decided to come down to one of the very famous districts here in Hamburg called St. Pauli to explore a little bit with the 24-70. I'm going to share some tips with you about photography with a standard zoom lens. That all starts right now. Let's go. Alright, so this stadium here behind me is the St. Pauli Fußball Stadium, which is right in the center of Hamburg in the St. Pauli district. And this place has got a very famous reputation, mostly because of the football team's logo and their fans. So the fans are pretty crazy, of course, and the logo is skull and crossbones. So yeah, possibly one of the coolest professional sports logos anywhere in the world, except for maybe there is a sports team in Madison, Alabama called the Rocket City Trash Pandas, so they're probably got to run for their money on the St. Pauli football team here. They play in the second division here in Germany in the professional football leagues, and from what I understand, they're not a bad team. So if you know any different, throw them in the comments below, but you probably know by now that I'm a Haas-Val fan, so ouch. Alright, let's talk real quick about the 24-70 standard zoom and why it's the only lens that I brought with me today to St. Pauli. So I personally really like the 24-70 focal range for walking around the city. It's kind of like an everyday lens, which is one of the reasons I wanted to make this video. The last time we did a video similar to this, I took out the 70-200, which is really good for isolating details in the scene. However, the 24-70 gives you more range from wide to like medium telephoto. So a good example of that is the shot that I just got of this photo box is at about probably like 26 or 28 millimeters, and I was standing just right here, so I'm really close to that scene, and I was able to capture it because the 24 mil goes so wide. And then on the opposite end of that, you could shoot at 70 mil, which is sort of like your medium telephoto range, to still isolate some details, which is really useful for walking around the city. So as you can tell, St. Pauli is covered in graffiti and street art and tags, and I've seen a lot of the comments over the last few daily vlogs of people mentioning how much graffiti they see in the background when I'm doing these pieces to camera. And I must admit, Hamburg is totally covered in tags and graffiti and street art, some of it being much better than others. This one, for example, but it surprised me as well. Like, coming from Canada, when I first arrived in Hamburg, I was sort of like, whoa, okay, there's graffiti everywhere. And funny enough, I never actually ever see anybody doing the graffiti, so I'm a bit confused on that one. And I mean, I don't mind it personally. It doesn't really bother me that much. I think it gives a bit of character to some of the buildings, especially the good street art. But indeed, you know, there are a lot of just tags that seem kind of shit. So, you know, it is what it is. But for me, I don't mind it. As a creative, I think it's pretty cool. Our next tip about the 24-70 standard zoom is that it can double sometimes as a portraiture lens. Now it's no 50mm 1.4, but if you do have a fixed aperture on your standard zoom, like say a 2.8, like the one that I have, the Canon L series, I can utilize it, especially at like 35mm, 50mm, you know, sometimes even 70 at that 2.8 aperture to really isolate the subject and get some really beautiful portrait images. Now, with that said, you do have to keep your aperture wide open at like 2.8 or as low as it can go, and then compensate for that light with a higher shutter speed to make sure that your subject is tack sharp. And that is how you get a nice portrait image with the 24-70. So one of the things that I like to do with my standard zoom, especially when shooting handheld, is to boost my shutter speed, because the 24-70 2.8 Canon L series does not have image stabilization and the EOS R does not have IBIS. So you want to check with your standard zoom if it has IS or if your camera has any kind of built-in image stabilization, because if it doesn't, you really want to boost that shutter speed to make sure that your images are going to be sharp, and this is especially important when shooting handheld. And the way that you can balance out the light difference is either by opening up your aperture or by boosting your ISO. But you don't want to go too high with your ISO to avoid noise in your image. But I find that the best shutter speed is anywhere between like 1/60th of a second and up from that, you know, depending on how bright your scene is. But sometimes I'll even shoot at like 1/500th of a second, like super fast shutter, just to make sure that my image is super sharp. Man, when is this pandemic going to end? This place looks so sick. This is like an underground basement music live club. It looks like just my hipster perfect dream hangout for a dive bar here in Hamburg, and it's closed. I feel so sorry for these people, man. This place must have been hopping when there was no restrictions on live music and events and bars and all that stuff. So really tough to see this place closed, but I will remember to come back maybe when the pandemic is over and have a drink and watch some live music. This is a very good example behind me of traditional German fine dining. Back to the Jolly Roger, and the 24-70 is definitely the perfect everyday lens for this kind of style of photography. Just your run and gun kind of snapshots, handheld. Really enjoyed this mini tour of St. Pauli. Probably should have called it the Graffiti Street Art Walking Tour of Hamburg, because this is one of the most graffitied and tagged locations that I've seen so far, even though there is graffiti all over the city and the majority of it isn't that bad. So that's pretty cool. I was able to get some really nice shots of that. As always, I hope you've liked the video. Let me know in the comments below if you have any additional tips for uses of the standard zoom 24-70 lens and what you prefer when walking around the city doing this kind of style of snapshot photography. I'm looking forward to seeing those comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next daily vlog, which drops tomorrow.